pleasure to have you here. And how are you finding our city?
It's good to be here. It's known as a global city, and it's proven itself out as such. I'm very impressed.
Good. It's nice to have you. We'd like to ask you a few questions, of course, because we're interested in promoting your new book, which is The Keepers, but it's now translated into Chinese. And one of the questions everybody's been asking is, you have said, we survive as a species. We do survive. We do go forward. Can you clarify that? Because a lot of people think, well, some of us die. People are worried.
Well, I've been advised as such throughout these abduction experiences and, of course, in the latter years to give you a response to this question. The human species, according to the Greys, primarily, go through cycles. And they have been going through the same cycle for untold millions upon millions upon millions of years. We evolve to the point where our technology becomes, we develop somewhat of a superior technology, about where we are now, instead of just cave dwellers, so to speak. The population goes from maybe many tens or hundreds of thousands to the millions and into the billions. And according to them, it's a cycle that can be very much predicted. We get to a point where we have the technology, we get to the point where we have the population, and we can either move to evolve or self-destruct. And according to them, the human species has chosen to self-destruct over and over again. And when the human race gets to this point where they can go one way or another, it could be that there's no chance of pulling us to the point of evolving, and that's where we go. Or there may be somewhat of a chance because there's a bit of a balance, and we can get to the point of evolving. So according to them, they're claiming that we are right at the cusp of that point right now. I think if you look within yourself, you pretty much can see that's pretty much so. Where will we be in 100 years from now, or where would we be in 200 years from now? So each one of us can look within ourselves and examine within ourselves, and you may be pessimistic or you may be negative, depending on where you're at. So we're right on the line. So since this is a characteristic or a cycle that happens over and over and over again, we're approaching that same point right now. Relative to when I say some of us have survived, I get the impression that we're going to get to a point where it's so close, but we will lean towards self-destruction. And when I say some survive, because I know from personal interaction that I've seen, I've interacted with near future human beings and future, way like thousands of years future human beings. So it tells me that, at least from my point of view, that some of us has made it. And I'll elaborate a little bit more on this. The primary purpose of interaction and abductions and things of this nature is, so since we're such at the scales can be tipped one way or another, they're pushing us towards evolving, and that's an important thing. But I think if the push wasn't there, or we weren't made aware of it, perhaps we go the other way. And that's a scary notion. That's not a pleasant notion. So I can say that I have interacted with people from the future, so I feel sure that some of us survive it at least. So I can at least say some of us survive it.
Right. So it's likely there will be some kind of thinning out of population through our own stupidity.
I think that's a natural. Again, it's a natural cycle that we go through. And again, judging from what I've seen a few near future and far future human beings in my interactions with this to tell me at least a few of us do survive. What percentage, I don't know.
No. And you did describe when they look down at the planet, they see this as a hornet's nest. I mean, I can understand Iran, Iraq, everybody fighting. If they view this planet as a hornet's nest, why do they choose to talk to the military as opposed to the people or the UN?
Well, I think they took 40, 60 years ago, in that time frame, I think they took a very wise course. They followed proper protocol, meaning that they contacted world leaders, global leaders, movers and shakers, heads of state.
I have to say that I'm not as concerned as Dr. David Jacobs and Bud Hopkins, but quite recently they've been showing their fear, their worry, their concern that this agenda is not what we think it is. They are almost saying that they feel that at any time these beings are going to come here, drop off all the hybrids and take over the planet. Now, I mean, how do we, in this interview, put over to people that it is not like that? It is not that concern.
Okay, again, we're going to come from my scope, at 1 to 3 degrees.
Right.
I take at face value what I've experienced for many years, and I myself had to evolve to a point to be able to understand what I'm communicating, and I'll do my best with it. Face-to-face contact has been, we're not here to take over, we're not here to eliminate you as a human being, we're not anxious to put anything out here to populate the planet so you can go away, we're anxious to see you evolve. Again, these are just insurance policies, but I have tremendous respect for Hopkins and Jacobs' work because they have a logical, scientific point of view. Perhaps they're expressing emotional concerns coming from the data that they have received, because there's nothing pleasant about a lot of the procedures that the extraterrestrials put people through. A lot of the memory is taken away so they're not traumatized. Again, this is part of the abduction scenario, and it's just one part of it. And it is, in my view, coming from many years of experience and watching their handiwork, it's a positive thing that they're doing. But when you look at it scientifically, some of these things are scary. And people are scared, and they're traumatized, and they come back and say, oh, this is awful, that's awful. And then they interview another person, and they're saying this is awful and that's awful. So they're concluding things that I don't agree with.
Well, because, I mean, people are focusing and highlighting the anal probing and the semen extraction. It's all part of the process, but it becomes sensational because it's not something that's generally discussed, not something that generally happens in this world. So when people focus on those procedures, I think it makes the whole abduction scenario quite frightening. What perpetuates fear.
Well,
but it's not about that.
No, it's. I mean, some of these things are scary. And going backing up a little bit, if you had absolutely no experience in the medical field, and you were in you saw a trauma situation, and medical practitioners come in there and doing their handiwork, well, you would see blood and guts and emergency procedures that would, if you've never seen it before, all you would say is, "This, I got abducted, and I was in total fear. It's the worst thing I ever saw. These are monsters. I don't know what they're doing." And then you go away from the scene without having any of the feedback to evolve it. And I think it's more or less like that, only on a larger scope. I'm not naive here because I'm taking things in for many years. And I feel pretty certain from experience that's what they want to see. And that's what I believe too. Also, the keepers, they refer to themselves as the keepers, collect and preserve every form of life that there is on this planet. From every seedling, trees, all biological material, ova, eggs, so they're preservers of these things also. Again, the push is for them so we can evolve and join.
Okay, Jim, can you tell us whether you know if it's the Greys, if the Greys are working for the reptilians, if there's a pecking order here, would you know?
Well, I can only, again, talk about for myself. Better than 90% of my interactions, abductions, whatever you wish, and many years have involved Greys, what are commonly referred to as Greys. And in the last 6-7 years, I've had some experience with what are commonly referred to as reptilians. I can't say, because I was passed along that way, that there's a pecking order, because the Greys were the one that worked with me to bring me to a point where I can interact with these beings, and now I'm here with the bosses, so to speak. So I can't really find a pecking order there, but I can tell you there's some stark differences. The Greys express little to no emotions. The Greys do not like to answer questions. The Greys only give you enough. They give you the information they want you to know, and they're not very open to gain any other information from them. That is just the nature of the animal, so to speak. And that is something I just know to be so, from having so many, many years of interactions and many, many abductions. On the other side of the coin, interactions with the reptilians, that's quite a different story. They express emotion. They are okay with you asking them questions and them responding to a question. They have feelings. They are more prone to give you a futuristic view of what they see is going on, what has happened, a historical view, and also to advise on where we should go, nudge and push them where the human species should go so we can join them. So, do I call that a pecking order necessarily? No. It's just that I can interact a little at a more human level with the reptilians. Not to say that I don't have that now, because my relationship with the Greys has so much evolved from the trauma and how awful and everything like that to a working relationship with them.
Okay, so we've discussed the spirituality. Let's just briefly discuss the technology of the extraterrestrials. So, especially with regard to time travel, interdimensional activities, this kind of thing, we could just touch briefly on that.
As far as interdimensional is concerned, I'm pretty much convinced that they use interdimensional space, so to speak, to go from point A to point B, to travel with. They use dimensions to keep themselves invisible. And I do know that in these interdimensional worlds, there are other life forms, other than what we would consider to be extraterrestrial. And at times in my experience, going from point A to point B, I felt that dimensions were used to go from the house to the craft and things of that nature for shorter trips. And I can't really tell you what these life forms are. They just look funny. Some of them look small. But there are dimensions. There are entities that take up these spaces. And yes, they use this as a tool. Okay, time travel to them is a common thing. And I've said this before, almost it's a technology as simple to them as having a remote control and turning on television and turning the TV on, TV off. It's an everyday thing with them. So, yes, they can put themselves in different places in time.
And also the technology you were talking about, that we have our, if you like, parts of our brain are atrophied. But in the presence of their radiated energy or their radiated technology, it seems to trigger something in us, so that we become a little more psychic. Is that right?
Yeah, you couldn't put that any better, because there's muscles in the mind, in my view, that lie dormant, and they activate those muscles, but they have to be exercised. So it took time for me to come along with it, so I can respond back and forth. Again, you got to remember, and I've said this before, we're dealing with beings, and talking about the Greys in particular, that can think 10 to 100 times faster, who warehouse hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thoughts all at the same time. So even if you have your telepathy down perfect, we're pretty much linear or one plane when we communicate back and forth, and you have a mind with all these things going on at the same time. But however, yes, I use the term muscles, for lack of a better one, in the brain or atrophied, and they do become more active. And yes, you become a bit more sensitive about perception. Your perception is heightened.
Yes.
And so one might say you're not necessarily a psychic, but your abilities are definitely better.
And you're able to interact with their technology. For example, your symbols in 3D, because the radiation is there. You can react and see it.
The technology is thought activated.
Yes.
It's wondrous. It's wonderful. I wish I could get full use of it, but I've had some.
Right.
But it is no doubt thought activated.
A bit of a tough question here. You obviously were at one point sitting on your couch. and the next minute you sort of teleported into some military base where you ended up on a gurney, and at times you were both on the gurney and the couch, just sort of transposing between one and the other.
Right.
And you saw the military people around, and out of respect, you didn't really name them or look at their name tags, and even to this day you respect them as humans doing their jobs.
Right.
The big question, do you think there's a chance that these military people may have been hybrids, or do you think you lean more towards the notion that it must have been covert groups?
Well, anything is possible here, okay? However, their mannerism was wholly human. And anybody that could be with me, if you were sitting next to me as you are right now, Neil, and you saw what I saw, and you saw how these people interacted and reacted, you would have no reason in your mind to say they're wholly human, they're wholly military, and perhaps some of them are contracted out who are civilians. So what I did see when that took place was an officer, a military officer, in a uniform that I figured to be unbeknownst to me. Okay, I can't say that it was Marines, I can't say it was the Navy, I can't say it was the Air Force, I can't say it was the Army, but there is a uniforms that they wear that look like I'm not sure which branch, but I can't connect a branch when I see them. There was an officer involved, and then there were men in their 20s. They appear to be in their 20s, or at best maybe low 30s, who wore white lab coats. And to clarify the tags, the tags, I couldn't really make anything out, and I wasn't trying to, but they looked like they were just a bit of like a different color. So whatever that meant, I was later told that in the onion of top secrecy and the different levels, that what tells you what clearance status you have. It's a different color tag. It's not a name. It's something very simple. Right. Blue might mean Bob. Red might mean something else. Is that it? I don't know. But that's the way that looked to me. But the way they responded, the way they reacted, I had no other reason to think that they were anything other than human.
Okay. So we've discussed the spirituality. We've discussed some technology. How about the politics? The politics of the extraterrestrials. What is their agenda, or what are they trying to goad some of these covert groups into doing? What is the agenda? What are they up to?
Well, I was advised again that the covert groups, black ops, secret governments, secret agencies, whoever is connected at whatever different levels, possess the technologies necessary to save this world, and then some. There's technologies that exist that will take, and you've heard me say this before and I don't mind repeating it, they'll take the toxins out of the sea. They'll take the pollutants out of the air. They'll take the toxins and the pollutants and the garbage out of our soil. They'll give us the ability to travel. They'll give us the ability to not get sick. And I'm convinced that the species and beings that I deal with possess the knowledge of stop dying. And they no longer die. They've conquered death. I can't say that they can't get killed, but they have conquered death. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that if you can maintain your current alertness, your brain power, and utmost fittest condition physically, and feel good about your life every day without any diseases bothering you, and have that zeal as you would have in your prime, and your mental faculties sharpened at their best, and be able to take in data every day, every year, year after year, century after century, millennium after millennium. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize what would happen to you as far as your perception of the world and where you should go. So they want us to join, politically speaking, the galactic neighborhood. From what I can tell, again, in that frame, people are doing their own business. Species and beings are going about their own business. There's interaction, but if it comes to a crossroad, one respects the other, and they go on. They're not warring, they're not fighting, they're not killing, they're not competing in that nature.
I see. Okay.
That they're claiming that we possess, when I say we, these covert groups, black ops, the knowledge that the extraterrestrials have, to a certain degree, to turn this planet around. And so what they would like to see is these people that they've made agreements with in the last 40 to 60 years come through on their part to bring us out. What the extraterrestrials are claiming is that they've taken this technology and they've used it to make weapons and they've used it to make money and not keeping the deals.
Right.
Okay, so what they want to see is these people evolve of themselves and come forward and have an avenue to come forward where they won't get butchered, so to speak, by the law, because laws have been broken against the innocent, law-abiding citizens to come to the truth. You know that, I know that, we all know that in this so-called ufology business, if you want to call it that. Not nice and pleasant things have happened to individuals. They want to see them evolve, in a sense, to come forward so these things can come out. Again, that's another step for us all to meet in the middle somewhere so we can have proper interaction. They're not going to come and wave a magic wand and we're all just going to change. So what they want to see is to a meeting point with these individuals. So this avenue of amnesty would create such a way for them to come forward and bring this information out.
The rainforests are being decimated. We see size of the rainforest just diminishing every day. China's losing the black and white panda. Do the extraterrestrials blame us poor little individuals for all this mess, when in fact it's the controllers that are making us like this?
Well, there's a sadness there, and it's a deep sadness. And according to them again, or advised by them, there's breaks in the food chain. They're claiming that the planet is dying, that we're killing our planet. We're responsible as a human species responsible. Of course, we have government, we have controllers that we all by law have to abide by in whatever form of government you're in. And one can always point fingers at them and say, well, they're doing this and it's not our fault. And then there's people who are burning and thrashing who don't care. And then I understand why they're doing it. And but they're not really pointing the finger and saying this one's bad, that one's bad, the peasant is bad. Are we going to say that several million peasants are bad because they're just trying to survive?
Right.
We can turn around. I think the harshest thing we might say is they don't know better. But they're going to look up at you and say, right, are you going to feed me every day? No.
Right.
Okay. So, a plan needs to be put into effect, which a plan needs to be put into effect for them not to be thrashing and burning, to have them actually commit to restoring the rainforest. In return, the world needs to provide them with a place to live, because they're interested in their family's survival. Most of them are doing it for that reason. Then we got the end, provide them with a place to live, if in return they use their labors to restore the rainforest. Once amnesty is in place and the knowledge comes out how to take the toxins and pollutants, can you start seeing a picture over here? Then this project can happen faster, and that can bring us closer to the extraterrestrials, again, to join the galactic neighborhood.
Okay. One of the things that would really help us is if the extraterrestrials showed up a little bit more. I know you're not really tuned into the field of UFOs a lot. You don't seem to follow it. You keep your experiences pure. So I know you don't want them contaminated. But I can tell you that the UFO sightings are increasing at an ever rapid rate.
I'm happy to hear that.
They're flying around. They're flying over Hong Kong. They're flying over New York recently. They're flying over India, Russia, China. Airports were closed down just not too long ago because a UFO was over Hangzhou Airport. So I don't know which species is doing this, but this of course is one way to speed up. It acts as a catalyst. So more people can look in the sky, more people can talk about it, see it, and then it becomes more real. So we do need more of this, and it is happening. So I'm happy to tell you that. And finally, I would just like to show you now for the first time, we've actually completed the translation of your book, The Keepers, in Chinese. So I just wanted to, can you just pass it to me? Here it is, Jim, The Keepers.
Oh, how exciting.
It's in Chinese, and it's the first exopolitical book on galactic diplomacy that Asia has ever seen. And there it is.
Wonderful. With the sketches too, I take it has everything in it.
It has everything in it, and it's going to be available for Asia in Chinese. And of course, we wish you all the luck for tomorrow night for your lecture.
Well, thank you.
You've got like 600-700 people turning up, and this is going to be a real winner for Hong Kong.
You did a fine. You and your team and everybody involved did a fine job with this, Neil. This is a global project.
Yes, it is.
And so, globally speaking, everybody needs to be able to understand and read what we're doing. And this is a fantastic step.
Good. Excellent. Thanks, Jim.